On March 14, 2025, former President Donald Trump stepped back into the public eye with a vengeance. After a period of relative quiet, his re-emergence was anything but subtle. The anticipation had been building for weeks, with rumors swirling about what he might say and how he would position himself in the current political landscape. His chosen venue, the Department of Justice, a symbol of American law and order. This choice was no accident. It was a calculated move designed to send a message. The DOJ, with its storied history and its role as the enforcer of federal law, was the perfect backdrop for what was to come. The occasion, a speech that sent shockwaves through the legal and political establishment. It was clear from the outset that this was not going to be a typical address. The atmosphere was charged, the audience a mix of supporters, skeptics, and those simply curious about what Trump had to say. Trump, never one for subtlety, used his platform to launch a blistering attack on his perceived enemies. His words were sharp, his tone unyielding. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. He railed against the media, accusing them of being totally illegal and corrupt. His disdain for the press was palpable, and he did not hold back in expressing his contempt. He painted a picture of a media landscape rife with dishonesty and bias, a narrative that resonated deeply with his base. He took aim at the Biden administration, labeling it a den of hacks and radicals. His criticism was scathing, his accusations severe. He portrayed the current administration as inept and dangerous, a threat to the very fabric of the nation. But perhaps most concerning was his direct appeal to the assembled Department of Justice prosecutors. This was a bold move, one that underscored his willingness to challenge the very institutions that had once investigated him. He urged them to investigate journalists and political opponents, claiming widespread corruption and a rigged 2020 election. His call to action was clear. He wanted those he deemed responsible for his political woes to be held accountable. Trump's speech was a stark reminder of his enduring power and his willingness to use it to settle scores. It was a demonstration of his ability to command attention and influence the national conversation, even years after leaving office. It also raised profound questions about the state of American democracy and the rule of law in the post-Trump era. As the nation watched, it became clear that the political landscape was still very much shaped by his presence, and the implications of his return to the arena were yet to be fully understood. Trump's return to the political stage has cast a long shadow over the Department of Justice. His influence is palpable, creating ripples of anxiety and uncertainty among the ranks. The once steadfast and independent institution now finds itself grappling with an unprecedented level of political pressure. Current and former officials describe an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, where every decision is second-guessed and every action is scrutinized. The whispers in the hallways are not just idle gossip, they are the manifestation of a deep-seated concern about the future of the department. This is a stark contrast to the department's traditionally independent culture, where open discussions and confident decision-making were the norms. The DOJ was once a place where career prosecutors could speak their minds without fear of retribution. Meetings are now exercises in strained silence, with career prosecutors afraid to speak their minds. The tension is palpable, and the fear of saying the wrong thing looms large over every gathering. The only acceptable answer to any question, one former official noted, is yes. This culture of uniform agreement stifles innovation and critical thinking, essential components for the effective functioning of any justice system. This reluctance to challenge the former president's narrative stems from a very real fear of retaliation. The fear is not unfounded. History has shown that Trump has a long memory and a penchant for punishing those he perceives as disloyal. Trump has a long history of punishing those he perceives as disloyal, and this has created a culture of compliance within the department. Officials are more concerned with self-preservation than with upholding the principles of justice. His recent speech made it clear that he expects the Justice Department to fall in line. The message was unmistakable. Dissent will not be tolerated, and loyalty to his vision is paramount. This pressure has created a chilling effect, stifling dissent and potentially hindering the department's ability to carry out its mission. The long-term implications of this shift are profound, raising questions about the future of justice and the rule of law in the United States. Trump has long reserved a special kind of vitriol for the media, whom he has repeatedly labeled the enemy of the people. This phrase, enemy of the people, has historical connotations, often used by authoritarian leaders to discredit and undermine the press. By using such charged language, Trump has sought to rally his base against what he perceives as biased and unfair coverage. His disdain for the media is not just a personal vendetta, but a strategic move to delegitimize critical voices and create an environment where his narrative reigns supreme. This animosity was on full display during his DOJ speech, where he singled out major news organizations for particularly harsh criticism. He didn't just stop at general accusations, he named specific outlets, accusing them of spreading false information and undermining his administration's efforts. This tactic of naming and shaming is designed to sow doubt among the public about the credibility of these news sources. CNN, MSNBC, The New York Times, The Washington Post, all were accused of peddling fake news and acting as mouthpieces for the Democratic Party. These accusations were not just offhand remarks, but part of a sustained campaign to erode trust in the media. By repeatedly calling out these organizations, Trump aimed to create a parallel reality where only his version of events was seen as truthful. Trump cited a dubious statistic, claiming that 97.6% of their coverage was negative towards him. This figure, though widely disputed, served its purpose in reinforcing his narrative of media bias. By presenting such statistics, Trump sought to provide a veneer of legitimacy to his claims, making them appear grounded in fact, rather than opinion. He went further, accusing journalists of engaging in totally illegal activities and calling for investigations into their reporting. These allegations were serious, suggesting that the media was not just biased, but actively working against the interests of the country. By framing journalists as criminals, Trump aimed to discredit their work entirely and intimidate them into silence. This rhetoric, while familiar, has taken on a new urgency in the wake of his return to the political arena. As he gears up for another potential run, his attacks on the media have intensified, signaling that this will remain a central theme of his strategy. The stakes are higher now, and the battle lines are clearly drawn, with the media once again in Trump's crosshairs. Trump's attacks on the media, coupled with his calls for investigations into political opponents, have drawn sharp comparisons to authoritarian regimes around the world. Critics argue that his rhetoric undermines democratic norms and erodes trust in institutions. The targeting of journalists in particular is seen as a hallmark of authoritarianism. By attempting to silence dissenting voices and control the flow of information, Trump seeks to create an environment where his version of events goes unchallenged. This strategy, while concerning, is not new. Throughout his time in office, Trump consistently sought to delegitimize the media and sow distrust in their reporting. His recent speech suggests that these tactics will remain a key part of his playbook.
Trump's DOJ speech was met with swift and widespread condemnation from legal experts, journalists, and politicians across the political spectrum. Many expressed alarm at his authoritarian rhetoric and his attempts to weaponize the Justice Department.
Andrew Weissman, a former federal prosecutor and prominent Trump critic, called the speech a chilling reminder of the fragility of our democracy. He warned that Trump's attacks on the media and the Justice Department posed a grave threat to the rule of law.
Journalists, too, voiced their concerns. Many pointed out the dangers of a president using his platform to intimidate and silence reporters. They argued that Trump's words could have a chilling effect on press freedom, making it more difficult for journalists to hold the powerful accountable.
While Trump's speech drew widespread condemnation, it also found a receptive audience among some of his most ardent supporters. These individuals, many of whom believed that the 2020 election was stolen, cheered his calls for investigations and his attacks on the media. Attorney General Pam Bondi, a longtime Trump ally, introduced the former president at the DOJ event. In her remarks, she praised him as the greatest president in history and pledged her unwavering support. Bondi's presence at the event, and her effusive praise for Trump, raised concerns about the politicization of the Justice Department. Critics argued that her appearance gave credence to Trump's claims and sent a dangerous message to career prosecutors. Trump's attempts to influence the Justice Department are not new. Throughout his presidency, he repeatedly pressured the department to investigate his political opponents and drop investigations into his allies. His first Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, recused himself from the Russia investigation, a move that infuriated Trump. He subsequently launched a relentless campaign to undermine Sessions and the investigation, publicly berating him and ultimately forcing his resignation. Trump's next Attorney General, William Barr, proved to be a more willing partner. Barr took steps to protect Trump from the Mueller investigation and intervened in other cases to benefit the president's allies. Section 8. The Weaponization of Justice. Trump's efforts to influence the Justice Department represent a dangerous erosion of democratic norms. By treating the department as an arm of his political operation, he undermines its independence and its ability to uphold the rule of law. This weaponization of justice has far-reaching consequences. It erodes public trust in institutions, creates a climate of fear and intimidation, and allows powerful individuals to operate above the law. Moreover, it sets a dangerous precedent for future presidents. If Trump is allowed to get away with politicizing the Justice Department, it will be that much easier for his successors to do the same. Section 9. The Fourth Estate under fire. Trump's attacks on the media pose a direct threat to the First Amendment and the vital role of a free press in a democracy. By seeking to silence critical reporting and intimidate journalists, he aims to control the narrative and shield himself from scrutiny. A free and independent press is essential for holding the powerful accountable and informing the public. When journalists are threatened or silenced, it undermines the very foundations of a democratic society. Trump's rhetoric, while concerning, is not entirely new. Throughout history, authoritarian leaders have sought to discredit and silence the media, recognizing its power to expose corruption and mobilize opposition. Section 10. A chilling effect. Trump's attacks on the media, coupled with his calls for investigations into journalists, have created a chilling effect on press freedom. Reporters may be hesitant to pursue sensitive stories, fearing retaliation from the government or harassment from Trump's supporters. This chilling effect has a corrosive impact on democracy. When journalists are afraid to do their jobs, it becomes more difficult to hold the powerful accountable and expose wrongdoing. Moreover, it creates an environment where misinformation and propaganda can flourish. Without a robust and independent media to challenge false narratives, the public is left vulnerable to manipulation. Section 11. The long shadow of Trumpism. Trump's DOJ speech, while shocking, is ultimately unsurprising. It is a stark reminder of his enduring influence and his willingness to undermine democratic norms to achieve his goals. The former president's attacks on the media, the Justice Department, and the electoral process represent a clear and present danger to American democracy. They are a continuation of the authoritarian tendencies he displayed throughout his presidency, and they threaten to further erode public trust in institutions. As the United States grapples with the legacy of Trumpism, it is essential to recognize the fragility of democratic norms and the importance of defending them against all attacks. The future of American democracy may very well depend on it.